All right, we'll try this again. Can anyone hear me now? We are potentially back to doing commentary here for Nerd Rage. Joe Lissette, going to be joined by Will Kruger, and you guys can hear me. Okay, can you guys hear Will? Will, are you there? No. Okay. So anyway, while that step gets put together, thanks for joining us here. First event of the year. We're working through issues. Anyway, this is round number 6. I don't want to take this away from Joseph Bernal and Aaron Hayes, as they are both 5-0 here, putting on a good display so far. 5-color creativity here versus 4-color prison. It's really kind of attracts Goryo's Vengeance, which is not something you see every day or ever. But Will, all right. Will, is Will in the booth now? All right. So anyway, we are underway here. You all in chat actually have more of an idea what's going on in the match so far than I do. But I can tell you that, okay, Will, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm absolutely ready. Looks like we came down into the middle of a really nice match here between Joe Bernal and Aaron Hayes on 4-color prison, which I believe is the goal of the deck is to reanimate Atraxa with Goryo's Vengeance.
Yeah.
That's a pretty interesting strategy, Joe. Have you seen much of this round? Because I'm certainly not super familiar with it. But
well, so I haven't seen much of this round because we had our little disruptions there. But I can tell you, I worked on Goryo's Vengeance decks about 6 months ago for a while, and I couldn't really make it work. I was working on Goryo's Vengeance plus Through the Breach, and Aaron is just running Goryo's Vengeance, and obviously has found a way to make this work at 5-0 so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's off to a really good start in the tournament. Not quite there yet, but looks like he's doing pretty well. And yeah, he definitely seems like he's posturing and presenting himself like he knows exactly what his plan is in the matchup, and he knows how his deck works, and it's paying off.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we see here Joseph Bernal not playing Blue Eye Control as he used to do on the regular here on the series. Still has Teferi Time Reliever in play, though, and I'm not sure that's going to disrupt Aaron Hayes altogether much. I mean, there is an Emrakul on the sideboard. You can't Goryo's Vengeance Emrakul with Teferi in play, but shouldn't have any trouble with Atraxa.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me here is that how often is Atraxa going to be actually good enough for him? Like, if my concern for Aaron here is that if he is to create Atraxa, draw like 5 cards, and then Joe untaps and plays Creativity for X2, makes it sacrifice Atraxa, and discard 2 cards and draws 2 cards of his own, is that going to be good enough to win the match? And we're going to have to see.
Yeah, yes, indeed we will. All right, so things are progressing here. Bernal with Creativity, I mean, it's not unlike, I mean, Creativity is a somewhat established part of the metagame here, and some of those lists have an Atraxa, but if you're Joseph Bernal and you're coming into the event, you didn't expect to play against the Goryo's Vengeance deck. That's just not really something we see anymore.
No, this is definitely out of left field. I don't really think I'm not sure exactly if Joe knows what's going on, but I think there's no Atraxa in the graveyard. He sees the pitch elementals with Ephemerate. He sees Tainted Indulgence, Faithful Mending. So I think that a player of Joe's caliber would have pieced together what's going on at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we saw a couple Archons on the Grief there by Aaron Hayes, a couple Archons in Joseph Bernal's hand. That is certainly not where he wants them. It is probably possible to hardcast them in this deck, but that's not the norm. So this is we'll classify this as a pretty poor draw for Joseph Bernal, right?
Yeah, this is definitely not what you want to see if you're Joe. You want to build your deck. You want to take into consideration this in deck building. Like, you want to make sure that you have at least 2 black lands. You want to typically see like a black Triome and a Blood Crypt. So that way you have an untapped one. So when you hit your 8th land for the Archon, it can be a fetch land, and then you can actually cast the Archon. But yeah, this is definitely not ideal.
No, certainly not. And now I mentioned that the Teferi is not going to really disrupt what Aaron wants to be doing. But looking at the deck list here, is Aaron going to be interacting with Bernal very much? I mean, not really. I guess there's Leyline Binding. Other than that, his spells are all sorcery speed, it looks like. So, yeah, maybe this Teferi is just kind of, it provides some sense of safety for Bernal, but not actually making too much of a difference in the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not sure that it's actually impacting that many of Aaron's plays. I guess one thing that can't happen is Ephemerate on an Evoked Elemental.
Right. Okay, and that you're right. That matters quite a bit, and it certainly can in various scenarios. So we see here Wrenn and Six joins the board, and then I'm guessing that's a Fable. Yeah, okay, that's a Fable the Miracle Breaker, which I don't know how much value the token necessarily has right now. I'm sure it has some, but just the rummaging ability will allow Bernal to clean his hand up, and that should really improve his prospects for the game going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want at this stage of the game when you've run a few too many cards that you don't want in your opening hand, like Archon of Cruelty. Fable of the Mire Breaker is going to be a great option, not only for discarding them to draw any new card, an Indomitable Creativity or a piece of interaction or whatever, but it could also unlock Persist as an option. So that was a great pickup for Joe, and this is a really nice developmental turn. But he's tapped out, and Aaron has full reign to do what he can, and we can see the full strength of his deck.
Okay, so moving into Aaron Hayes' turn here, and well, certainly fallen pretty far behind on the board, but a deck like this, I mean, you're thinking you're going to do things all at once. We have Gristlebrand, we have Attraction to Reanimate, but I think you mentioned, that isn't necessarily guaranteed to get him back in this game. There's no one-shot kill in this deck, right? It's just value Gristlebrand, value Atraxa.
It's just a lot of value, and then you'll see that they're very wisely included a lot of cheap 1 and 0 mana pieces of interaction. So when you go way up on cards, after you've spent a lot of mana being invested into them, then you can capitalize on it with the 0 mana Grief, 0 mana Solitude, 1 mana Ephemerate, etc. So you can a deck like this could definitely come back, but he had a full turn there to pull off any of the cool tricks that he can do, and he didn't do that much. And now we're back on Joe's main phase, and he's got a whole lot of lands. He's cleaning up his hand with the Fable.
He's got this Fable. He's got Planeswalkers Aplenty. He's got Wrenn and Six ticking up, and Aaron isn't doing much right now. So at this point, if you're in round 2, if you're Bernal, you might be thinking, okay, my opponent brought some kind of interesting mishmash of stuff, and it's just a failure, and it's not going to work. But at 5-0, clearly the deck works. It's just struggling right now. So you have to be, even though you're like feeling probably pretty safe, you have to be thinking, okay, what exactly am I in for here? Because my opponent's got to be setting something up.
Right. It's not just a coincidence that you see that this person is 5-0. It's not like they just got super lucky the whole time. So we're going to see how Joe manages to see Joe respect a lot of powerful things that could be happening.
Yeah. Okay, Bernal figuring out how he wants to develop this turn. Joseph Bernal played in several Nerd Race championships. Last year, kind of a down year for him, I would say. It wasn't quite the powerhouse maybe he was in the past, but still always going to be a threat. I think a player, once you become this established of a player, even if a format doesn't kind of go quite to your liking, you don't have success for a while, you're still just one different deck, one different alteration, one different format away from being right back where you were before, right? I think that's kind of the way things go.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, once you're sort of at that level, then you're definitely going to be a threat to take down any tournament that you enter. And Joe is definitely capable of taking down this tournament and many others.
Yeah, maybe when we have some time in between rounds, we can talk about kind of what elements would go into establishing a player as someone who is able to just has the basic skills to come into a format and learn it and do well. But for now, we're still in the middle of this game here, and Bernal is having all the fun at this point.
Oh, yeah, he's just got everything, and there's not a whole lot going on the other side of the table.
Yes, indeed. So
he's got a pile of cards in his hand, a whole lot of mana, both Planeswalkers. He's got a reflection of Kiki Jiki. The world is his oyster here, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even if he were to have an Archon in his hand, he's not that far from hard passing one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Teferi in play. So Creativity can dump all of Archons into play, although unclear how many Archons are even in Joseph's deck at this point. So that's potentially an issue.
Yeah, it looks like he's gone for the full 4 copies of Archon of Cruelty. And so I believe I see 2 in the graveyard. So I'd say that there are 2 more, I imagine. That's, I'm not a math major, but.
I mean, there could be 2. There's 2 left in between the hand and the deck. I don't have a good view of the hand. So there could be some stuck in hand as well.
True.
There's another Teferi drawing. And yeah, it's just a matter now of just finding out what's an efficient, safe way to finish out a game, because Aaron is certainly not putting up much of a fight at this point.
We're sort of just drawing and passing the turn, which is not really where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Really, with any, I mean, unless you're hitting a land drop and you're playing bullet control, but when you're playing like a combo deck, especially when you're playing a very time Raveler in play, you're not threatening to do anything. It's just a sign of a non-functional draw.
Right. And then, although, I mean, we talk about Aaron's deck not being kind of like a combo deck, it being a value deck, Joseph has put himself down to 8. So
yeah, I mean, we're not that far off of one hit from one of the legendary creatures, whether it's a Atroxa or Grizzlebrand, both have some power.
There is some permission in Joseph's deck. He has a couple Spell Pierce, actually a set of Spell Pierce and a couple Remands, as well as his own Leyline Binding. So he has defenses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like if Aaron could do something, then it could definitely be blown up. But
all right, so the Wrenn and Six does get eaten up by Leyline Binding here, so there's going to be no ultimate to provide an AZ route for Joseph to finish this game off. So he's going to have to grind a little bit harder. You see the tokens coming across here. Aaron drops to 18. I don't think that matters too much. I guess Grizzlebrand draws after several more attacks get somewhat crimped, but...
True, yeah, we can sort of mitigate the impact of that particular payoff, but at the moment, the thing that's more important here is that Judge is able to continue sculpting his hand with Fable the Mirror Breaker, and I believe Aaron has one card in his hand, and from the way the game's played out, it's pretty clear that it's not a particularly good one.
Yeah.
That's clear to both players at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of the scenario where, okay, well, both players realize Bernal is certainly likely to win this game. It's just a matter of actually it happening.
Absolutely. I mean, just one Glorious Vengeance away on Atroxa away from, we can see drawing 5-6 cards, and then, all sorts of crazy things could happen. There is a little bit of the mitigation. Teferi stopping Ephemerate on an Evoked Elemental is definitely going to put somewhat of a damper on things, but I don't think that would be a huge deal, but we could see it matter for sure.
Right. All right. So here comes an attack across for 4 this time, a little bigger chunk of damage. Bernal will net himself a treasure, and let's see, we have Blood Crypt in play.
Yeah, are we going to see hardcast Archon of Cruelty? We've got a lot of cards in our hand. We've got a whole lot of mana. We have double black, so if it's in hand, I mean, I imagine we'll see it happen.
Yeah, and it's protected also because of Teferi. So yeah, there's no real risk here as long as Bernal's able to keep a couple mana open for potentially like Spell Pierce or Remand. Remand probably being more fitting at this point with Aaron having 5 land in play. Looks like Bernal. Yeah, well, it looks like Bernal has 8 land plus a treasure. So I guess if you hardcast Archon, you couldn't cast Remand. So maybe he's gonna wait.
Yeah, I mean, we might see end of turn. We see end of turn Transmogrify, and we're going to see, because we have the Teferi plus, so that the sorcery turns into effectively an instant, and we are able to put in Archon end of turn, and then we're going to untap, and then that should be lethal damage because the Archon's worth 12, and then the tokens are worth 3.
How does Archon of Cruelty hit so hard?
It's a good one.
It is so strong, and it's not a legend, and it's just there's so many advantages to this card. It's really impressive, and it just got printed. Absolutely. It just went right into like all the formats it was legal in as new, kind of like Atraxa is right now. It's
100%.
The even in Legacy, even in Vintage, the decks that cheat creatures into play have to consider like, okay, I've had my deck list for a few years now. Now there's Archon of Cruelty. Now there's Atraxa. Does that fit in my deck?
100%.
Joseph Bernal said no on Atraxa. Aaron Hayes said yes.
Yeah, we sort of see both the players diverging and how they want to cheat a large creature into play, and Joe's gone with Archon of Cruelty, which Aaron's gone with Atraxa, and both of them are very strong. Both of them have different merits, and Atraxa sort of asks you to build your deck in a certain way, and Archon can just kind of go into anything. For example, well, not go into anything, but in the sense that like you don't need to do more work to make it a good reanimator target, I guess. But Atraxa, you need sort of work to make it a good reanimator target, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at. But Archon of Cruelty, definitely one of the best things that you can cheat in. I played Reanimator in Legacy in one of the Magic Online showcases a few weeks ago, and I played 4 copies of Archon of Cruelty, and I was often entombing for it over Grizzlebrand because it's just going to be better on that board. Grizzlebrand, I had Grizzlebrand in play, and I lost a few games to bigger Murktide region, and I had no life to pay to draw cards. But Archon of Cruelty could have won those games because it is often that much better. And we are seeing Joe with the end of turn Transmogrify into Archon, taking down game 1. So very nice, clean game from Joe. And now we'll see the impact that some of the sideboard cards can have. And it looks like that Joe has 3 copies of Flusterstorm, 3 copies of Nature's Flame. Oh, we have Aaron's deck list up. Oh, Joe.
So let's go ahead and go through Aaron Hayes' list first, as we or Bernal's. Okay, so we'll go with Bernal. So we're continuing on right here saying, so he's got Spell Pierces, he's got Remands. those are probably going to stick in. Facing down, well, he didn't get to see the deck really go off or do whatever its thing was supposed to be, but he can make a lot of guesses here. There's probably not a lot of things he's going to be uncertain of as far as what's going on in Aaron's deck. So what do we like the obvious cards here? Flusterstorms? Do we want Veil of Summers?
Yeah.
How about do we want Leylines?
Taking a look at it, it's interesting. So we have one copy of Veil of Summers, and we have 3 copies of Leyline Binding, and those are both pretty potent against a certain range of Aaron's draws, which is basically Grief and Grief Ephemerate, which is definitely one of the stronger draws that Aaron can have. You can sort of see resemblance to that with the more popular deck, Rakdos Scam, which uses Undying creatures to trigger Grief multiple times, and both of those are going to be very good against that, but not particularly good against the rest of it. The card that I'm really eyeing here, if I'm Joe, is the Flusterstorms, because that'll allow him to sort of effectively fight over returning the Atraxa, and then if we can sort of prevent that from happening, then I'd expect that to be really, really powerful.
Yeah, all right, let's go ahead and look at Aaron Hayes' list. It's certainly more of an outlier here as to what's going on.
Definitely a very unique deck list here.
And that's why we're happy to feet our players 5-0, but when they're 5-0 with something that's a little off the wall, that's even better.
5-0, it is effectively a brew, an unknown quantity, is really impressive, and I'm really interested to see this deck here. And wow, we have a full 7 Leylines, so that's fascinating. One thing to note is that white Leyline Sanctity, does shut off Archon of Cruelty's triggers, so because that does target an opponent, and unfortunately it's not target player, so you're not forced to target yourself. It's just a 6/6 flying, which is still quite good, but that is one route that we could go. The Emrakul, I don't think is going to do that much. I imagine it's just there for a mill, or maybe you have a certain matchup that you want to return it with Pario's Vengeance. Fairy Time Raveler looks good to potentially fight over any of the permission spells. Prismatic Ending and Silence, neither of those seem particularly good, although Silence is a fine way to fight over Flusterstorm as well. So
yeah, no, there's definitely a lot going on here. A lot of some options, some nice appealing cards to kind of clean the matchup up and help out against the Archons, like you were saying. And Aaron Hayes doing well here. I mean, maybe it's not a brew, maybe it's not his own deck, but this is a new deck, and so all these terms I think apply. Like, people
however you want to.
Right. If you follow the metagame precisely every day on every week on updates, I mean, maybe you've seen this a lot. If you're touching in for the first time, this is the first origin of a few months. If you've been away from Modern for a little while and you're looking at this, you're like, hey, I haven't seen all this before.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting strategy. And Goryo's Vengeance used to be a very popular strategy maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Returning Grizzlebrand, which we still see resemblance here. And what people would do is they would use Nourishing Shoal and Worldspine Worm to draw through their whole deck and kill his Grizzlebrand. And so it's interesting to see some resemblance of an older modern deck with a lot of new additions like the Evoke Elementals, Ephemerate, Atraxa, stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. So we're about to get underway. Aaron Hayes is a pile shuffler, so we are nearing the players being ready to get going here. And being on the play in game 2, and honestly hoping to do just more than he did in game 1, whatever it is.
Yeah, we just weren't really able to accomplish a whole lot. We missed the developing turns due to some technical issues, so I'm not entirely sure if he mulliganed low or if something Joe did really broke up his draw, like a Spell Pierce, like a timely Spell Pierce on a Faithful Mending or something like that. I'm not really sure, but he definitely was not able to accomplish that much, that's for sure. And we'll see if he can do better this game. And it looks like both players kept 7, so we're going to have a pretty good game here.
All right, underway. Aaron Hayes with Hallowed Fountain. Do we have turn 1 play to justify that? Oh, we have multiple turn 1 plays. We have the Grief. And what do you think? There might be something to follow this up this turn?
I imagine that we're gonna have an Ephemerate, and then we're gonna see the quote unquote scam draw that we all know and love. Joe has a really good hand here with 2 copies of two lands, a Wrenn and Six to represent more lands, the namesake card and creativity, and a few ways to interact. So even though Aaron does have one of the better draws here with Grief, Ephemerate, black card, white source on turn 1, Joe's hand is perfectly well equipped to be able to fight over that, and so we'll see how it plays out. And he's going to leave him with the Wrenn, which makes sense because Wrenn will take up to 4 on the turn it comes down. Grief is going to be able to attack it for 3, actually. So it's actually not 4 like I was thinking it would be because I'm used to the scam. It's a counter, but it actually does knock at the counter. Aaron does get to get the Ephemerate next turn to take another card. So that could take the Wrenn. Yeah. But Flusterstorm or Fierce could trade for the Ephemerate. So
that's going to start for Aaron. Yeah, takes out the things that can disrupt the Ephemerate, and then here gets another card, and Bernal will show that he drew another copy of Leyline Binding, not something to be excited about, and now left with what looked like a great hand is now a 2-land hand with some cards that are somewhat uncastable.
Yep.
And if Aaron has any sort of follow-up at all here, he could be well on his way to recovering this game. And, well, okay, a tap land, a Triumph, that's something. I mean, I guess we don't expect him to win the game on turn 2. He did have a pretty good start on game 1. That's probably enough for now.
Yeah, turn 1 was definitely very powerful. But yeah, picking both of the cheap interaction spells makes total sense, just because Joe would have the option of fighting over them with fighting over the Ephemerate next turn, so you might as well get all 3 cards, as opposed to, yeah. Anyway, Joe still got Leyline Binding, so he's not just going to die to Grief beatdowns. Leyline Binding is going to happen on the Grief before that, almost for sure. And then if Joe's going to be able to hit enough land drops, he'll be able to get Indomitable Creativity down, make some Archons. But so basically, Aaron's job here is to prevent that from happening, or whether it's by racing Joe, by putting Grizzlebrand into play and killing him, or if it's with cheap interaction of his own. And it looks like we've seen no land, no spell, and Joe actually drew a Triumph, then he played that over the Arid Mesa that we all know about because it was revealed to the Grief.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, playing this creativity deck with the Dwarven lands, you want to wait, right? Your fetches, you want to wait as long as you can, so you or at least until you have 3 other mountains. Yeah,
it makes total sense. We see the Arid Mesa come down now, so we assume that Joe didn't draw like a shock land or something. He could have drawn Dwarven Mine, and he definitely didn't draw Fable because that would have come down as well. And I think we see a pass of the turn there from Aaron. So no land, no spell, 2 turns in a row. That is not really what you want, where you want to be. We had that really powerful opening, but I mean, we're just sort of giving Joe time here. But
yeah, I mean, there's certainly, the more explosive a deck is, it's often less consistent. And we saw here with a great opening, and then Aaron's going to keep a hand that has that, and it's correct to do so probably almost every time.
Yeah.
But then you're at the mercy of the top of your deck, and if it doesn't
100%.
quite work out right, you can get stuck, and that's kind of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, we're sort of seeing the cost of when you have a lot of moving parts like Ephemerates and Truxes and Grizzlebrands and Gorgeous Vengeances, and everything needs to be in a certain place at a certain time, then it's really easy for this to happen where it's like, well, my hand is in a Trux and a Gorgeous Vengeance, my graveyard is empty. What am I going to do? I haven't, you know what I mean? So if I'm Joe, the cards I'm thinking that might be in Aaron's hand, the cards I'm worried about are like cheap interaction, potential Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm, something like that. We know that Aaron doesn't have that. From our perspective, cards that he could have are potential White Ley Lines, Atroxas. Everybody knows about the Atroxa and Grizzlebrands. So one of the fatties that he could reanimate could be in his hand from this spot. I don't know. That's just what I would be thinking about if I were Joe in this position. And Joe decides to not go for the creativity that we all know about, and just instead chooses to sit on his mana, make his 4th land drop, and force Aaron to sort of take some action. And then at that point, then we will go for the Archon, which is just a sign of a very practiced player, just able to know when it's time to go for the combo. It can be really tempting to go for Archon of Cruelty or something like that, but Aaron has 2 open mana, and we know that he has 5 spells in his hand because he's just been missing land drops. So, and we just heard the Gorya's Vengeance, so there's no longer fatties. We know that for sure. There's probably another copy of Gorya's Vengeance, or something like some way to reanimate Atroxa.
Yeah, Tainted Indulgence is kind of a cool card enabler for this whole deck. And this Grief, it looks like the Grief is staying back this turn.
Yeah, I don't fully understand that because Joe can only get 1 dwarf, and so he's not threatening a double block.
Is it possible that Aaron values his life, 1 of his life points, as being worth more than 3 of Bernal's? Because of Grizzlebrand? I mean, maybe.
I suppose that's possible, but with Joe at 11 and Aaron being at 18, I'd say that that would be a miscalculation on his part, if that's correct. And I imagine that there's something else that he's playing around, but it can't be something like Endurance or like a Flash creature, because you can't play creature for creativity. You can only play the creature that you want creativity into. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to reliably use your Indomitable Creativities to put Archon into play if there's Endurances and such in your deck. So you have, Yeah, so Joe's sitting on the creativity we both know about, and decides to not go for it. He could have done an X's2, but he's choosing to play around potential cheap permission, something like that.
And Joseph may also be wondering why Aaron didn't attack.
Yeah.
Because, like you were saying, I mean, down to 11 life, it's not immediately obvious. And with fetch lands in play, I mean, there's life total is starting to come under threat. And certainly with, kind of the Gorya's Vengeance, haste, huge Legend Flyer, being at 7 or 8 is a big difference between 11. And yeah, the lack of attack here is, well,
absolutely
suggestive of something, but that's not clear maybe what that would be. And here's Teferi for Aaron.
Yeah, it's definitely not obvious to me exactly what he's playing around, but you don't get to 5-0 not knowing how to play your deck, not knowing how to play the game. So I imagine that there's something that he's respecting here. And Joe has no response to this Teferi, no Leyline Binding, nothing. He just wants to sit here. That is fascinating.
Yeah, and so Teferi
So
bounces that token.
now we attack, but we're threatening to get another dwarf to kill a Teferi. So now I'm confused. Because this turn not attacking would make total sense because we want to protect the Teferi.
Right.
Last turn we're gonna go to 17. Does that matter? I don't know. But like if Joe was at 5 here and we were at 16, I think the game would be pretty objectively going better.
We could be so we know that Aaron doesn't have, or at least a couple turns ago didn't have a legend in the hand. He clearly has something. An ephemerate here would be pretty strong and would also allow him to block on the potential goblin attack back.
Okay,
so that would
now that's what it is. We're gonna see a draw step ephemerate. Very nice timing.
Yeah, and so this is going to that is a plains, right? Yes. Okay.
Yep, and so that makes total sense because that will actually untap the thing. So it's a effectively 3 points of damage from Aaron's perspective, and we have the Teferi, so nothing can go wrong. So that makes total sense. Good play on his part. And now we get to see what Joe's working with. I believe we all know about a creativity and a Leyline Binding.
So if there were 2 creativities, Aaron could still get stuck here potentially, but there are not.
Yeah, so we see a Remand that doesn't do anything as long as the Teferi's on the board. We have Leyline Binding to take care of the Teferi, turn on the Binding. I wouldn't be shocked to just see 2 copies of Leyline Binding. The first one, I guess we don't have white, but I imagine we'll just start by hitting the Teferi here, and so we can have Remand up for anything that Aaron manages to do. We know he's sitting on a lot of spells because of the missed land drops earlier in the game, so wanting to have Remand up seems pretty reasonable.
What would not Leyline Binding on Grief have allowed the token to take down the Teferi?
That's true. I don't fully understand why we didn't go for that. That is
and now Grief.
That is a great question, and now it's around. So yeah, I don't know. That does seem like it would have been a lot better. Yeah, that's an interesting maneuver. That does seem like it would have been better.
Well, there may be. Okay, there's going to be a question here.
Okay, yeah, looks like the players are going to call for a
touch. Whatever this question is about is probably going to explain why Joseph made the play he did.
Yeah, because that dwarf did not have summoning sickness, so we could have hit the Grief and then hit the Teferi with the dwarf. So...
all right. Well, we just cut off the table sound. Just because we had issues earlier, I want to verify chat. You can still hear me. And also, we'll check if you can still hear Will.
Hello, Twitch chat.
All right. So if we can get some confirmation on that, that'd be great. Nothing yet, so I'm suspicious. But while this... Okay, they can hear us both. All right.
They can hear us both. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I'm a little at a loss here. I mean, it is not uncommon for me as a commentator to not realize all the lines that are open to players, especially when we can't see their hands. But there's some mystery here as to.
Yeah, I don't really fully understand either, because that dwarf could have attacked. We got it on the end of turn, and then.
Okay, so chat has asked. Or chat has suggested that the question is what happens to the ephemerate if it gets remanded. That would be a reasonable thing to ask at this point. So maybe that's it.
That's probably the question. That does not answer my question of why we didn't exile the Grief and attack the Teferi. Kind of unclear. Perhaps a misstep. I mean, we're late in the day. It's round 6. These players have been playing since 10 a.m. So 7 hours at this point.
Yeah,
and tournaments are exhausting. And
it would still be a reasonable question, because even if a mistake was made, or maybe it wasn't, either way, Bernal has to play the game from the spot he's in now.
Yeah,
and so the looming issue is this ephemerate on the Grief.
Yeah, and so we don't want to remand this, because then that would be worth two copies of ephemerate effectively if we were to target the Grief. So definitely makes total sense to just give him 1, and he's going to take the Leyline Binding. And we don't have white, so we couldn't hit the Grief. I'm definitely still interested in why we didn't. Yeah, it's not worth harping on. Anyway, now Aaron has sort of seized control of this game. Looks like he's got, I see a Leyline Binding and a Watery Grave in his hand. And we're going to see Leyline Binding on Leyline Binding to get Teferi back. It's a pretty good play.
Oh, yeah, which can then dispatch the token. So that would be very strong. Now we're going to see the Remand from Joseph.
We're just going to cycle the Remand. It's not really doing anything else. It's just going to cost Aaron a mana here. It's not going to be a very good Remand, but I mean, it's better than letting it rot in your hand with the Teferi in play, right? We need to draw another creativity basically right now, but soon. We're at 7. There's a 3/2 attacking us, and it's getting worse. So we need to find a creativity very, very soon.
Yeah, a couple turns for Joseph to work this out, and going to need another token, so that's going to require another life point or a Fable probably. This Grief, I don't think can attack, can it? Can we? I believe this was ephemerate on
we
upkeep.
Ephemerate that. That's
so that should.
Okay, that's.
I'll see if I can get a message over to the table. Real quick.
Yeah,
that is this out. Go ahead and cover
not
for a second.
A legal attack. All right, this match is certainly something.
All right, so I sent the message to. We'll see if that gets caught in time.
Interesting match. That's for sure.
So, anyway, we are
prismatic ending on a token.
All right. We are in the middle of resolving a spell. I believe the table spotter has now seen the message, it looks like. So we'll see if we can get this. And maybe we're wrong, but I do believe the ephemerate was on the green.
Yeah, it resolved. We chose to not remand it explicitly, and that should cause it to resolve. I believe we're resolving creativity now, though, and we have an Archon of Cruelty in place, so presumably that is effective. Although Aaron definitely has lots of countermeasures to that, potentially Goryo's Vengeancing an Atraxa, and then making a lethal attack, and then forcing a chump block, something like that. Could be really good, because actually Joe's at a very inconvenient life total here at exactly 7. Possibly should be at 10. Not sure if that grief attack was legal, so we have...
Yeah, okay.
And so now it's... Okay, we're just... Looks like we're untapping it, and we're going up. I saw him adjust something with a pen, so maybe his life total is up to 7.
All right. Well, they may have to...
Okay, so Joe's up to 7, and the grief is not going to attack. So it looks like we have chosen to apply the very simple fix of, oh, I didn't do that, and we're just going to go ahead and untap it, give Joe his life back, and we're just going to continue as normal.
Hey, the system worked.
Yep.
All right.
Awesome. And now that he chooses to keep the Teferi over the grief, which makes total sense because it'll be able to bounce the Archon. So that Archon is not long for this world. Although it does give Joe a card, it gives him a much needed life buffer, and it takes care of the imminent threat of the 3/2 menace on his dwindling life total.
Yeah, and getting that, I mean, just for psychological value, I mean, that grief has taken 4 cards out of Joseph's hand. I'm sure he's happy to just have it in the graveyard finally.
Yeah, that has been a very good grief. It's been used for a lot of damage and a lot of triggers. So definitely a very high value grief in this game.
I mean, I guess they are either, I mean, once you get past the exile to cast for free, and they just build from there, and you at some point you're breaking even, and then in your head, and this one did a lot of work. All right, so Bernal at 10, Aaron down to 12.
Yep.
Sorry,
Joe,
go ahead.
Yeah, Joe very notably with 6 lands in play. So if you were to untap and play one, he would not be able to play a potentially bounced Archon of Cruelty. He also needs another black mana, because I believe we have Naya Triumph and Grixis Triumph, which I believe are Jetmir's Garden and Xander's Lounge in play. And then we have 3 Dwarven Mines and a Steam Vent. So that only 1 black mana source at this point in time. But I believe the other one is likely a Blood Crypt, so it is untapped. So fetch lines do represent untapped black mana, which is a big deal at this stage.
Okay. Bounce the Archon as you expected.
Yep.
Maybe could have been some kind of craziness with bounce my own Leyline, and then you get your Leyline back, 8 to Teferi, and then I re-Leyline your Archon.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know that makes. Yeah, that doesn't seem necessarily.
Teferi is pretty high value, so I think we want to get that around.
Yeah.
And the Archon being in his hand, like we said, he's multiple lands away from casting it, a black source away from casting it, and so this makes sense to me. Leave the Teferi in play, put the Archon in the hand as opposed to exiling both. Okay, and Joe's a Teferi of his own, which is interesting. So now we can go
Now that little absurdity of bouncing a Leyline to reset the other Leyline they just mentioned on Aaron's turn is now also available for Joseph. Not necessarily that he would want to do it either.
Yeah, these sort of Teferi Leyline Binding battles where you're bouncing and Oblivion ringing each other are very interesting.
Okay, that's a Faithful Mending, I think, for Aaron in response to the Teferi, but it does come into play.
Yeah, and now we see that both players have managed to get a Teferi Time Raveler on the battlefield with a lot of lands in play, and Joe's definitely getting back into this game from which he started off very early, very behind, very early, but since then he's managed to get it about to parity. There was a point where I think we both thought that Joe was ahead, actually. And then it swung back. So this is definitely a very good game. If you want to see more
absolutely.
good games of Magic, you can follow twitch.tv/NRG Series, the channel you're watching right now. They're here every month.
Yeah, and there's been some good stuff today. I mean, Will and I have just checked in.
We've only last year. Most months. A lot of months.
Most months is right. The if you are just tuning in now, which Will and I effectively just did half an hour ago, there have been some highlight matches already on the day. There have been apparently multiple Jace ultimates I heard in one match.
Wow.
And
you don't see that every day. Multiple.
Yeah. There was a 69 card white based prison deck with a number of singletons and two loves in the deck that was 4-0 at one point. I don't know how it's doing now, but yeah, so there is certainly some interesting stuff to see here today, as now Aaron Hayes is going to bin an Atraxa, and it looks like Gordon mentions it. Yeah, and that will. It's going to be good enough a lot of the time, I would imagine. That's kind of the reason we're playing the deck.
I think that might be a reason that Aaron is 5-0 because he is interesting Atraxa. That's just a crazy idea I had. I know.
Yeah, so Atraxa showing up in a variety of formats, being cheated in by a variety of different 2-mana spells, and then even hardcast, I guess, in standard. All kinds of things going on. So here you see Will and I for the first time on the day. Hope you all enjoying yourselves, doing well. We're in the middle of round 6 right now. We're going through the end of the Swiss today, plus the quarterfinals. Semifinals and finals will play out in the morning. But we're certainly in the thick of it in this match. I wouldn't want to pick a favorite here. Both decks capable of very strong plays. And is there a more important card than Teferi to kind of like what should we keying in on aside from that, or is that just the
both decks are named after cards.
Right.
We have the Gorgias Dungeons deck and we have the Indomitable Creativity deck, and we're going to see Indomitable Creativity making maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 Archon of Cruelties. That's going to be basically Joe's best thing that he can do. That's really the peak of what his deck can accomplish, is turning the dwarves from Dwarven Mine or treasures from Fable or the goblin from Fable, any of those things into big 6/6 flyers. And by the same token, the main thing that Aaron can do is try to return Atraxa, and then he's going to try to ephemerate the Atraxa potentially, or he can get some of the Modern Horizons 2 elementals with Solitude, Grief, and then we're going to try to ephemerate those and just sort of get a lot of value that way. And then, but again, we have to stress, neither of these decks really has like a combo kill. Like what they do is they just put in a big creature and they say, can you beat this? And normally the answer is no. There's no, I'm going to Grizzle Brand, I'm going to draw my whole deck, I'm going to play some Lotus Petal Dark Ritual, I'm going to reanimate, and I'm going to kill you with Thassa's Oracle or whatever. Nothing like that. It's just a lot of throwing haymakers at each other, and it's going to be pretty exciting to watch. You can see those games were kind of interesting where one player got to do the thing and the other player didn't. And now, hopefully, we'll see a game where both players can do the thing and sort of throw giant creatures at each other, and it'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah. All right. So game 3 sitting up here. I believe Aaron might be on the Multi 6 here. Yes, he is.
Puts the card back.
And all right, we're underway. So chat, why don't you let us know if one of these players has a choice, what even is the best big creature to put in play here? And there are actually 3 choices. It could be Archon, it could be Atraxa, or it could be Gristlebrand. All three are.
There's so many options. And do you like to reanimate them, or do you like to turn your dwarves into them?
Yeah, sure. However you want to go about doing it. What has the biggest impact on the board? And I'm not sure entirely what the answer is. I guess Archon beats the other ones if it's second.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. Where like if you put the first Archon down, then you might not be able to get value out of the trigger. But like if there's an Atraxa in play, although Atraxa isn't going to be in play for that long due to the Gorgias Dungeons clause of exiling the creature afterwards, but Ephemerate does manage to mitigate that, so maybe there will be games where Atraxa does stay in play. And Joe with the turn 2 Wrenn and Six, definitely one of the better cards in his deck. This is a matchup where it is pretty good, but it's not stellar. There's matchups like against Blood Control. Wrenn and Six on turn 2 is everything, because it means that you get to hit every land drop, you get to play all your mana, and you get to cast 2, 3, 4 spells in the same turn, and you can really punish like a control player or something, or like anybody playing like a more fair style of game. But that is not really what Aaron's up to. He's here to ephemerate his grief. He's here to Goryo's Vengeance his Atroxo or his Crystal Brand. He's here to draw 14 cards in the same turn. And, the marginal value of getting an extra land. And here we're going to see main phase fetching and Dothotry. I imagine that indicates a Leyline Binding on our Wrenn and Six, if I had to guess. And that looks correct, although we have some glare, but that looks to be Leyline Binding. And back to Joe. And, even there, it traded for a Leyline Binding and it got a land. That's a very positive exchange, and that's about the floor of that card. And you can really see the power of the Modern Horizons cycles and the impact that they have on the format.
Yeah, so we'll await Joseph's turn 3 play here. It's going to be a binding on a binding to get back Wrenn 6. Yeah,
get
sure.
back my Wrenn. And
so how much worse are... Now, the printing of Unholy Heat was definitely, a bit of a check on Planeswalkers in 100%. Modern. Is Leyline Binding going to have a similar effect? Or has it had a similar effect where, again, Planeswalkers are just, no matter how high loyalty they get, the old days, like we heard... Jace Ultimates today, but Jace Mind Sculptor Ultimate is not a thing that happens all that often in Modern anymore.
No, it's been a long, long time since I've seen that, especially in Modern.
Yeah, and the ease of dealing with it with like Unholy Heat and like Lightning Bolt, for example. Okay, yeah, sure, that's just not effective at burning down a Planeswalker, but Unholy Heat and Leyline Binding are great at stopping them, and so maybe that's just a big part of it.
There's definitely something to be said, though, in my opinion, that Leyline Binding has its own weaknesses, right? Like it's weak to Beseiju, which pairs well with Wrenn and Six, so you can sort of see that kind of situation. Urza Saga, also good with Wrenn and Six, and Urza Saga represents Haywire Might. And so there's lots of natural checks on Leyline Binding, so it's kind of interesting. And you can see Joe fetching main phase here, making sure to very intentionally leave up a blue source there, I believe. And so that way he's able to potentially fight over anything that Aaron might be able to do. So, potentially a Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm, lots of copies of those. So if I'm Aaron in this spot, I've got alarm bells ringing. Why did he fetch that Dwarven Mine main phase to leave up the blue source? And there we see a Spell Pierce Untainted Indulgence, which is very smart. Just making sure that Aaron could be able to play around Spell Pierce later. Maybe he can't afford to right now. And so we can sort of just prevent the Atroxos from going to the graveyard and coming back this turn.
Yeah, all right, here is Faithful Many. And this is something that, I think in any format where you're playing against a Reanimator type deck, which I think we could, even though it's just Goryo's Vengeance, it still is a reanimation deck. Do you try and fight over the reanimation effect, or you try and fight over the ability to put the creatures in the graveyard? And that's a choice you have to make. Bernal piercing this Indulgence here, and it seems reasonable. I mean, Indulgence is just whatever Aaron's. If there are any hiccups in the hand, Indulgence is going to help clean them up. And Bernal, and I think even in more powerful formats, also the prevailing wisdom is you go after the enablers, not the reanimation itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, there's like more reanimation effects than there are Entombs. I mean, there's only one Entomb in the game, and otherwise you usually have to draw and discard effects like Faithless Looting, Faithful Mending, Tainted Indulgence, stuff like that. Faithless Looting, notoriously banned in Modern, so we're making do with some worse alternatives in the Esper colors here.
Worse? We're gaining life. I mean, instant life gain is great, right? I mean,
that is true. We do get 2 life, 4 life, even if you were to flash it back. So that's 4 more life than Faithless Looting has ever given anybody.
I mean, sure, it costs more mana and more colors, and okay, there might be other bad things about
a little more work, but
all right. Faithless Looting, pretty good card, I guess. Okay,
we can really see Bernal pulling ahead here, and now if Joe's hand is really good, he's gonna be able to capitalize on this turn because Aaron is low on mana. He knows that he's not gonna have to play through much. At the most, he's gonna have to play through like 1 removal spell or counter spell, maybe like a Solitude plus a Spell Pierce or something like that. Is sort of what's going on in Joe's mind here. But if he has creativity and targeting, especially with backup targeting, potentially a treasure token there, then the Solitude isn't going to do anything. And if we have backup, okay, we're actually going to do it for 2. It looks like targeting 2 creatures. So Solitude Ephemerate, we actually are choosing to let Solitude Ephemerate sort of get us here. I'm not sure if we have any way to play back like that, like a Spell Pierce and the Ephemerate. But yeah, we're targeting both dwarves, I believe, is what Joe went for there.
Right. I mean, not targeting the treasure. So based on what you're saying there, not targeting the treasure would imply there probably is some kind of spell-based interaction,
100%.
right?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you were to target, if you had nothing, then you would almost certainly target the treasure, so that way Solitude plus Ephemerate doesn't get both your creatures, stop you from Arconing. So here I would imagine that Joe has something, whether it's Flusterstorm, Spell Pierce, some way to just guarantee that this creativity is going to give him at least 1 Archon of Cruelty, and then his plan is to hope that that's good enough. And right now it's looking like it.
Yeah, it very well could
likely
be.
is.
Yeah. Okay, we have here. Is that a binding first? So just to pick off a token. So this will be okay. Whenever the judge call, Joseph has a question. But either way, leading with the binding, I guess this doesn't necessarily mean, it probably means there's no ephemerate to go with potential solitude. It doesn't mean there's not an actual solitude. So Joseph's supposed to think this through. And I imagine here the question is, if the Leyline Binding comes into play and targets and it gets removed in response, does the token stay in play? And the answer to that is going to be yes. But I believe that would make sense as far as what the question is. It could be something else, but that would fit the scenario.
Yeah, I can't imagine Joe's asking if he can Flusterstorm this. He's played with that card quite a bit.
Yeah.
I imagine it's that. And, as time has gone on, we've sort of seen Wizards move from wording things like Fiend Hunter or Title of Scholar, where it's 2 separate triggers, and if you kill it in response to the first one, then it's kind of brutal and you don't get the thing back. But Leyline Binding is sort of worded differently. It's one fully inclusive trigger, I guess, and so it sort of makes it so that you can fight back, and he has the binding there to fight back, and there's no solitude to be seen, so that's going to be 2 Archon of Cruelties. That's going to force Aaron to discard 2 cards. I believe he has 2 or 3 in his hand total, and nothing really to reanimate in his graveyard, so I don't think we're drawing live to any really cool sequences. Yeah, we're just going to discard our whole hand. He has a Solitude, but no white card. That's brutal. He had a Leyline Binding and chooses to go for the Leyline Binding over the Solitude and pitching the Leyline Binding, which makes sense, but definitely punished a little bit by Leyline Binding. But
yeah, I mean, it is more card efficient if it works, but you're right. I mean, Joseph has fewer things that can answer the Solitude than the Leyline Binding. So
yeah, now Joe has 2 Archons versus an empty-handed opponent with no Atrox in his graveyard. If he were to draw he has another card. He has 2 more cards. Okay, those were just off to the side. Fair enough.
All right, so Aaron perhaps still in this game, but anytime you're facing on double Archon, I mean, this squadron of ley lines on the board here, half of them are Aaron's, and here is a Shadow Prophecy. I love this card, but this is asking a lot here.
Well, it's asking a lot, but this is sort of how Aaron does actually get back into this game, because it's one card that can put Gorgeous Entrance into his hand and put a Atrox in the graveyard at the same time. And it can also even put a land in his hand. But it looks like he's got nothing, and that's going to be game and match for Joseph Bernal, moving on to 6-0 here in our 9-round tournament. One more win, he can probably get an intentional draw into the top 8. And Joe has quite a few top 8s already at this point, and so I'm sure he wouldn't mind adding another one to his resume.
Yeah, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind an invite to the end of the year championship, because that is a change this year. In the NRG Series, all of these Saturday main events are no showdowns. So direct invite, in addition to prize money and points and RC invites, the winner receives an invite to the championship at the end of the year. And that is a big deal. That is something that, I mean, once it's in your pocket, you can just kind of
100%
stress a little bit less about everything else.
There's so much to play for at these events. I had the privilege of playing the last one, and it really was just such an incredible event. I mean, there was a lot of money at stake. There was the title, which was ultimately taken by Raja, who's here today. I believe he was doing well. He was 4 or 5-0 last I saw. The money, the title, there's all sorts of, and it's really just a great, really special environment. And there's just not many tournaments that are 16 players for that high of stakes, and people who are familiar with each other because they play on the series and stuff. And Joe's played a bunch of them. I think he's played maybe 3-4 of the previous ones, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind playing this one. And even if you qualify for this one, the 16-player tournament, the winner of that gets to play a Pro Tour. You get qualified for the first Pro Tour of 2024, and you can't really ask for much more than that. A 16-player PTQ with $25,000 in the prize pool, very exclusive event, going to always be a very high level of competition. And if you're a competitive Magic player, that's what you want to do. You want to compete against people who are out there trying their hardest, just like you. And that is the perfect kind of event for somebody who is a highly competitive person, and they choose Magic as their outlet to compete.
I mean, when you put it like that, yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
So we'll mention here, this event was a sellout. In fact, we allowed in more people than we allowed in some people on the wait list, and we actually went over. So if you're making plans to attend a Nerd Rage event in the future this year, strongly consider pre-registering. I guess some people were allowed in, off the wait list. But if you think you want to attend one of these, I mean, the event did not sell out until Friday night, so it's not like you have to plan it months in advance. But if you want to attend one of the future events in the future,
you're
put on your schedule.
You're going to have to pay the entry fee anyway.
Right.
Just
Right.
do it early and make sure you don't get capped out, and just be on the right side of it.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody that's here, and also all the players in house. I mean, this is a great start to the year. To have
incredible.
To have a full house here. So if we have a few minutes here, I'm not sure exactly where we're at in the round, whether we're going to a backup match or a break, but if we haven't been told yet. So while we're just sitting here,
nobody over there. There's nobody at the feature match.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Will, because we're talking about the exclusive event, preparing for the event. You qualified for the Pro Tour in Philadelphia, and I know you were unable to go, but you did. COVID. Right? Yeah, and that's unfortunate.
That was pretty bad timing. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Very much so. But I wanted to ask if you could share any thoughts with the viewers about you were preparing for the event with a major team.
Yeah.
So if there's anything you want to pass along about that experience, what that meant to you, or what you learned from it, this maybe is a good time while we're while we're waiting.
I had the privilege of preparing with Team CFB. It was pretty awesome. I would have loved to have been able to play the event actually, but I'll be preparing with them again for Pro Tour March of the Machines. And ultimately we had Reed win the tournament, which was awesome, and we had Gabe Nassif in the top 8 and lots of other good finishes. And I've just sort of been since last year. I've just sort of been really been able to get my foot in the door at higher level Magic, and it's been awesome to prepare with some players like that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And I didn't hear Reed Duke say that he directly attributed his win to your presence on the team.
I don't think that happened.
It was implied, I think.
I don't think that was implied either, but that's okay. I think that is all him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that was a really cool experience. If you have any more questions for Will, because he's a regular player on the series, but not too often.
Normally a player,
Yeah. So if you have any other questions, maybe you can throw them in the chat at some point, and we'll get to them when we can.
Yeah,
in the meantime, we're going to take a break and come back because the pairings are going up for round number 7. So stick around. This is NRG Gaming. We're hoping you're enjoying it. We'll be right back.